Good. Okay. Well, hello, creatives, community, and kind folks. Welcome to RPG with DBJ. I am your host, DBJ, and welcome to the channel. We have on and off been going through a process of something called the Cutting Class series, where we just start. Hey, Poe, what's going on? It's been a long time. For those who do not know, this show goes live on Twitch, YouTube, and the audio gets punched out to our own Discord server. So you can join those and take part in the show in any of those ways or catch the show later. Now, the Cutting Class series, which we've been dipping in and out of, is our idea of taking the classes and kind of like delving into them unscripted, talk about them for about 45 minutes to an hour, and just basically have a good time with it, rethink some of the classic Dungeons and Dragons tropes, and try to get some cool discussions out of it, and get the cobwebs out of the brain. That's what we do here. Plenty of ideas to steal, so let's get into it. And by the way, good morning, guys. Cam, Kylie, Scott's Poe is down in there somewhere. But anyway, the Cutting Class series, as I said before, where we take a class. This week we're going to talk about the Paladin class. And for those who do not know, this show goes live Monday through Friday, and today is Monster Monday. So let's talk about break apart the Paladin a little bit, at least historically and in a modern context in the game's 5th edition of the world's most popular game, and go forward that way. It's the new Poe. Okay. All right, no problem. Now, the one thing that I've brought up before about other character classes is that some of the terminology comes with its own baggage, and it's unfortunate. Some have no baggage at all, like the fighter. Right? There's just every culture, every iteration around the world historically has a fighter type, but there's no historical or cultural baggage attached to it, whereas the classic paladin, does. I would even suggest that they probably should change the name from paladin, because there's a context to it of like an armored individual of a particular time period, maybe mounted, belonging to a religious order, where the paladin now is far more of an oath keeper or oath taker, a person who promises themselves to a particular set of ideals, and is able to draw from it certain capabilities to push themselves beyond the mortal coil, to be able to, just due to their devotion to a particular mantra or set of ideals or something, that they somehow are able to extricate themselves out of danger, and of course gain some extra special abilities because of it. And like Cameron says, Pathfinder uses the name champion instead of paladin, which is, I believe, is a far better descriptor, because yes, we can very easily translate paladin to other cultural types or other settings. The problem is that because it has baggage to it, you got to unwrap it first and then rewrap it somewhere else. And sometimes you can get people at your table who still want to embrace the old version when you're trying to make the new version. Like, for example, there has been a desire to create the samurai class as opposed to the paladin, when the paladin is in a Japanese setting is just probably the same thing. There's probably no need to design something new, but you know how we are. We get caught in the weeds, and unfortunately, our tabletop gaming community sometimes gets wrapped too much in the nuances rather than letting things go. So now, for it comes to, since today is Monster Monday, I thought we would talk about some of the origins of where paladins in your world might come from. These oath takers or oath keepers or what have you, and some of their adversaries, and in many ways, some of the um, more than just killing things opposed to you, what kind of adversaries can we set upon these individuals? Because one of the things that happens with a paladin is that oftentimes, especially in our real world, when some people are able to take an oath, that it's a strange mix of purposefully adjusting our mindset to see the world in a way that may not be seen by everybody else, and to keep your word when to keep your word or follow a code of conduct that may not be beneficial to yourself at the moment, but collectively, simply because it's in a fantasy setting, that despite the fact that it shouldn't work for you, it does. And sometimes those oaths can come in conflict with reality, with your family or friends, or connection to a faction. And oftentimes the enemies of those paladins are ones who uh, uh, many times their origins are intrinsically tied. Like there's people who are doing things the community doesn't want done, so then we gather together a bunch of people who promise not to do those things that have been done against our community, and then you start to set this motion where people are now devoted to an oath, and then you have others who are like, I shouldn't be devoted to that oath, and it can kind of become this like vicious cycle. Ricker says Paladin is so ingrained in D&D now that it just has to be there, even if the name isn't the best. Yeah, there are legacy things in Dungeons and Dragons. I mean, we could go through a bunch of legacy things like alignment, armor class, hit points. And there's lots of things in the game. Spell name, the absolute length of spells, I think, should be cut down or could be cut down, because we know there are other games that do similar things, as opposed to we could go through a dissertation on this. Is a hint as to next week when it comes to game design. Yeah. Like Rick said, don't mention the A word. La 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 la. Yeah. There's plenty of games that do away with those things. So I think it's just a legacy. Uh, a legacy part of our game, the paladin being one. Now, in the old days, us old grognards remember when paladins used to be able to do something called detect evil, because there in the game alignment was more important because there were things that affected it, and especially when it came to detecting alignments, covering up alignments from being scried or detected, and as well as magic items that would change your alignment, or magic items that were adjusted to people of specific alignments or opposed to them. And that's when the long before the smite became a word associated with the paladin, it was detect evil, kill evil thing. And the lawful stupid part came out, where player characters would just want to play paladins that would detect evil all day and start killing villagers and townsfolk and stuff, and then wonder why the people at the table, including the dungeon master, were like, dude, like, seriously. It's that's where that came from, because there was no there was no there wasn't um a reason to not do the thing, because that's what paladins were set to do, and everything about the paladin was like, destroy evil, go after evil, stop evil. So it was just an excuse for players to become psychopaths and sociopaths and murder hobos in the game. Now, since then, they've changed that to a detect good and evil doesn't actually work that way any longer, as well as the fact that a lot of the oaths are not specifically um, movie fantasy related silver armored knights going out into the countryside. An oath can be any number of things: pirates oaths, and oaths to a nation or a countryside. There are, of course, religious oaths to greater powers. There are oaths to protect people or bring something about. Oaths of vengeance are a perfect example of like oaths that have a terminating end to them and such. Yeah, Andres Martin, hello there. Now, when it comes to the using these oaths, of course, you got to have enemies. And one of the really cool things about the concept of taking an oath to do something to destroy something else, I'm not sure exactly how this is worded, but I'm going to use my own terminology. And I know there's a literary term for this, but I'm going to use the term stone and water. All right. Follow me on this. So there are times when the world won't change, a stone world, where there are things in the world that the PCs really have a difficult time changing. People's mindsets or outlooks or something. Game of Thrones is a good example of this, where the world is going to be the way it is no matter how you are. So the world is stone, but you are water. Your character, your motivation in the world can start to change. When harmful things are done against you, maybe you become hardened against the world or depressed or double down on your intentions or give up your mission to do something else or fall in line. And so character growth happens where the world stays the way it is, but the character growth happens. The character is liquid. The character is water. Now, when it comes to paladins kind of operate in the other opposite way, where the world can be fluid, but the paladin stays the same. They stay true to their oath, and this can be pretty harsh because sometimes the paladin might come across a situation where they need to break away from their oath, but they're in a situation where it may or may not benefit them. An example would be it's because this has come up with, say, the ranger class as well, which we'll get into, where the paladin's devoted to kill something. Let's go with the classic goblinoids, and then come to find out that, oh, maybe you have a blood relation with a half-orc or something. So now the PC's put in a position like, okay, I'm supposed to destroy them, but they are also my blood. What do I do? And that's where you can draw a lot of conflict with when it comes to paladins, where they, on one hand, they need to stick to their oath. On the other hand, they could cause problems by, say, killing enemies that now their nation state are now allied with. I began a game that way where Goblinoid army. I'll get to your comment in a minute, Cam. I see it, but a Goblinoid army came into town with their dead, babies and pregnant women, and was like, "Hey, those knights that you're all proud of, this is what they do." And the people were like, they were all taken aback, and then the Goblinoid hordes became part of the nation state, and they were allied with them. And then the knighthood, or at least a section of the knighthood, rebelled and left, and the PCs had to hunt them down. And it was a way of flipping the script on the player characters, like, ooh, that we do things like that, don't we? And it's like, yeah, yeah. There are ramifications for sticking to your oath. Now, of course, there are many stories that are told where the characters understand that breaking or sticking to their oath means that it's going to have a certain outcome, but yet they do it anyway, understanding what the ramifications are, as opposed to player characters folding their arms and pouting when, after they killed, the babies of the evil that they're supposed to hunt down, and then wonder why there are negative consequences to what they've done. And so enemies of like the paladins could pull those kind of tricks, whether they did it on purpose or sent a red herring or what have you. Much like in the real world, where an enemy might hide themselves behind innocents, and then when the enemy they get into conflict and those innocents are killed, they can start pointing at the paladins or something like, see what they do, or it might just be an unfortunate side effect. Paladins going on a murderous rage or something of that nature. Now, Cameron says, I wish alignment was seen as restrictive to some people. I like the idea of having to be a good person to receive your powers. That right there is okay. We have more character classes, but the paladin seems to. Oh, you said which alignment wasn't seen as restrictive to some people. I like the idea of having to be a good person to receive your powers. Oh, okay. Now, the paladin seems to be the pinnacle of this. Although we do have other character classes, we are less harsh with them, like clerics, druids, warlocks, but character classes that receive something from at least an intelligent source outside of them, or some draw their power from some kind of external uh, location, or even if a character's background is something like I'm a wizard, but I draw my power from the elemental planes or whatever. It can be difficult because, unfortunately, other players at the table turn into law enforcement and they start policing the actions and reactions of the player playing that type, which is another legacy thing that was very terrible about the paladin, was having other players sit around watching your every move, right? Like, paladin goes into town, sees someone hungry, takes bread off a table without paying for it, gives it to hungry person, and then everyone's like, aha, you stole, you should lose your powers. And it gets into those kind of conflicts at the table, as opposed to, instead of going 0 to 60 with I'm the DM, you lied, so now you lost your powers. It's far better to slowly have a character who is breaking their word to slowly start to change. I suggested maybe giving them one or more, like maybe your lay on hands ability changes into like a lay touch of harm or something, or maybe one of their spell effects like the light spell changes to darkness or something. You can start to change little bits and pieces, or maybe they receive different messages, or maybe there's an enemy that they somehow could not detect for one reason or another, so it could be far more subtle. And also, not judging, the difference between judging an action, a reaction, and a person's motivation. For example, the paladin feeding someone hungry who's, lawful good might be like, well, I'm being good because I need to feed someone, and my lawfulness in this town of thieves and murderers doesn't really apply. And so allowing the world to be a little bit far more liquid in terms of, it's the argument about what alignment is Batman, because Batman wants to bring law and order in a town that doesn't respect law and order. So should a paladin respect the laws of a place that is disrespectful? Should they have to work? And mind you, this is where you start to have differences in paladin features, not mechanically, but at least narratively, where one group of paladins is like, well, our enemy has these weird laws and they're pretty brutal, but we need to respect them. Whereas there's others who are like, yeah, they've got laws and none of those laws are appropriate to the way a lawful and good society should operate. Public torture or slavery, or restrictions on gender or race or social class or age or something. They're like, no, we're not paying attention to that. We can break those laws easily. We're not breaking anything. Those laws are like subhuman to humanity, and you could decide that up front. Like, how does the player think about that kind of thing if they're trying to play someone lawful? And also, how does the world react, or at least their faction react to something like that? Yeah, like Rickard said, the problem is whose law? In our own world, you can go various places, and there are laws that we kind of like scratch our head, like, why does that exist? Right? Like, I don't know. And it depends on whether you consider that law to be a good one or a bad one or something. And I think leaving ourselves open rather than, we're talking openly here. We don't need to make our decision. It's just leaving it open. Michael Marin says, you could go so far as a mechanical change. Your lay on hands takes on a sickly gray color, and it goes from D8 to like D6 to D4, I guess is what you're trying to say. Yeah, exactly. Or maybe it starts to shift. Like I'm not one who is, I don't feel the carrot and stick idea is a good one, right? Because no other character class is under the restriction of having their capabilities taken away from them. I would rather modify them. So let's say your healing does die 8, maybe it goes down to die 6, but then you're able to add some kind of harm with the D4. Like you might have something that ranks down but goes up or shifts in its thing, or it may be like you're saying, like it takes on a sickly gray color. Maybe the person is healed, but not in the manner in which you want it. Like maybe there's like a weird pallor to them, to their color, their skin, or your lay on hands leaves these weird burn marks or something more narrative, rather than instantly going into, great, I get to crush your character down and no one else has the same restrictions. That's the kind of thing I'm against. And I don't think it's a good idea to do that. When other character types or choices. Now, mind you, if everyone agrees to it, like, hey, I'm a rogue, but I don't give money to the Thieves Guild, which Thieves Guilds have been like pretty much removed out of the game, or clerics needing to, atone or tithe, or wizards needing to go to a library to get their spells. Unless you're going to include that kind of those restrictions, I'd say don't bother doing it. I would rather just modify it. Rickard says, law in the Paladins are lawful way is more order than law, or more divine than mortal. Yeah, because we can I really don't want to argue with this, but the law in alignment, the lawful in alignment, isn't necessarily like a written type of law. It could be very social, where people are expected to act a certain way, but nothing's written down. It can be order, where we don't want people running around in chaos. We do need to have certain people in charge, and for other people to follow those instructions. Maybe it's more, remember, lawful also means tradition. So traditions could be how you greet each other, who gets to eat first, what kind of clothing you wear, the type of languages. Like for maybe Elven is far more seen as respectful to your elders, whereas Dwarven might be seen as vulgar in your world, or something of that nature. So it might be far more social in that manner as well. It could be other simple things, maintaining cleanliness, or not having pets in the home, or something of that nature. Like those are lawful actions without ideals, without them being the law, right? It just could, it's when we greet each other, we shake hands, or we all eat just before sunset or something. Rickard says, they are dogmatic zealots, not good subjects to the ruler. Good. I was thinking the same thing when I read that. Like, good dogmatic zealots? Is that an oxymoron? Yeah, because remember, the oath taking, they have taken an oath that they have so embraced that it grants them abilities, which means that in some way, would they ever question their oath? And what happens when they question it? Now, of course, there's the idea of someone could easily break their oath and they still have their capabilities, maybe because they are set on a path that's greater than themselves. I've brought up the movie. I'll get to your comment there, Zach's 200. But I brought up the broken oath of the character in the movie The Prophecy. He was going to be a Catholic priest, stopped hearing the word of God, became a detective, and then ended up hunting down individuals that were basically angels were at war with each other on Earth. So his Catholic background plus being a detective set him on the path to specifically be the person who could solve this issue. So a paladin that breaks their oath might actually be doing the right thing, even though they themselves are like, shit, maybe I shouldn't be working with these people. Zax 200 says, I refluff the oath breaker to oath of the occult, and really widen out what paladins can swear an oath to in general. I can't agree with you more there, dude. Like oath of devotion can be devoted to anything. If what they're devoted to changes, it's like a cleric changing their deity, but not their domain. And we don't understand what the earthly devotion to is. Like Zach says, they don't change subclass, but do change up RP aspects. I love it. Like, for example, what if the devotion is to save the nation? and the nation has to travel to a distant land to set up a new um, something happens to the world, and the paladin makes an oath to protect the nation. Well, maybe before they were like law enforcement, now they've moved into explorers, right? So you could really start to shift and change what they're devoted to, especially given a mortal time frame that their function isn't being a law enforcement and protecting the people from the outside. Maybe it's protecting people on a travel path or something, or literally building houses and encampments or something, you know. Um, let's see. Mofa says chivalric codes in medieval history were sometimes actually written out, mostly revolving around the tenets of the church. And sorry, this isn't to disrespect your comment there, Mofa. For some reason, the Green Lantern Corps from the DC Comics just came to my mind. Green Lantern's light in the whole 9 yards kind of reminds me of that. I don't. It just made me think of the. You're talking about the chivalric codes, and you are right. Chivalric codes don't need to be like this ephemeral. I made a generalized oath. It could be written down or passed on from generation to generation. A tribal community very well could have paladins in them. Just because they don't use long swords or wear plate mail armor doesn't make them any less of a person with an oath. Maybe it's just something passed down from, you know, fathers and mothers to their daughters. Like, you're going to take an oath to protect the countryside or hunt or something like that, and they're like, yeah, I'll take that oath. I'm of an age, and you learned this when you were young, and it might not even be written down. It could be in song, or chiseled in caves, or tattooed on the skin or something like that, which would be really cool. Michael Marin says, true. Without a mechanical change, it is more interesting narrative-wise and fair to non-paladin players to have the paladin become more aesthetically changed. I absolutely agree. And I would absolutely, like, without changing mechanics, if you wanted to be a tribal person, but there's no plate mail, I would just go, can we just reskin this as like hide or bones or treated leathers, or just, you know, or just make it narrative, right? Like, I wear a lion's mane or something like that, but I just happen, you know, I use all the mechanical features of the, you know, disadvantages on stealth and all that kind of business, but it's just what my character is. And I'd go, yeah, because that's your character concept. What's wrong with that? You know, hey, can I have a flaming spear instead of a glowing sword? And the answer, of course, would always probably be yes, as long as the rules don't change. Zax200 says you can get some real DMs who even say that paladins who attack their party due to failing saves versus dominate person should lose their powers. Yeah, that's BS bull. Whatever. I've heard some horror stories out there about dumb stuff like that. And that's just ridiculous. You know, people's motivations and oaths to things usually take place over a very long period of time. You know, it's the idea of a paladin can't sneak around. They can't wear a dark cloak and hide who they are. And I'm like, why not? In this context, sure, maybe they have to hide who they are in a city of thieves. Yeah, maybe they're cracking their knuckles because they want to, you know, wreck shop, but maybe they just can't at this particular moment because it's not smart. You know, characters can. The lifespan of stupid people is pretty short in a fantasy setting. Most characters of even the wildest alignments have some intelligence to them, as long as it's like 8 or above, to get them to not do dumb things in public. And that's one of them. Rickard says, Druid starting a forest fire to cleanse the woods. Nothing against Druids destroying nature if it saves nature. The problem is that DMs tend to be short-sighted, with actions that have long-term effects. I think there is in the Unearthed Arcana, I think they brought up the slash and burn Druid as a type. But you are absolutely correct. There are historically people who slash and burn fields and forests to purposefully allow nature to have that cycle. And paladins, not let's go back to the goblinoid hordes, right? Killing the goblinoid hordes. talking with them, trying to parlay for peace, um, uh, uh, exchange of captured individuals over the battlefield, learning the languages, all that kind of stuff. Even a begrudging respect for your enemy are all things that people who take oaths can still perform. Right? That's not that isn't a thing that you that suddenly is disappears from the paladin's order. The paladin, if a paladin is devoted to protecting their nation, then the goblin destroying the goblinoid horde might be a secondary event, right? It's like, no, we just want people to stop being killed, at least temporarily, or or whatnot. Yep. The only drawback to playing a Dexodin in 5e is that a Dex-based paladin, for those who don't know, in 5e is that you won't be taking the Great Weapon Master, and Smite doesn't apply to ranged weapons. That's a yeah, that kind of pigeonholes. I'm sure they mechanically figured, or I'm hoping they've mechanically figured that if you were able to apply it to other things, that you might have too much of a crossover. But if a player came to me with a good idea, I think I would allow, Smite to go with their chosen weapon, especially if the setting calls for it. Because not every setting deals with the issues that are happening. If we go back to the tribal thing and someone's got a spear and they can throw it, especially in an open dungeon, open air dungeon kind of effect, I'd allow that to happen because maybe there's very few places to hide, or flying adversaries can get at you very easily as opposed to going into dungeons or something. And I'd go, what the trade-off for changing the rule to allow somebody to have something else? Yeah. Yep. And multiclassing is is an optional rule. Yes, I said it. I cussed. Michael Morin says armor class is an abstraction of armor and dodging anyway. Your tribal guy just dodges better wearing wolf hide. Oh, of course, of course. And like a shield doesn't necessarily need to be other than giving you +2 AC. A shield could be shaped as anything. So a shield could be a weapon in another hand for that player character. Like, I'm not a dual weapon fighter. I'm carrying a weapon and a deflecting device. Or like you said, AC is abstraction, which a lot of people forget, that the abstraction of it is, as long as I'm wearing that, animal hide, that wolf hide or something, that is the thing that gives me the armor class that I have. As a matter of fact, we recalculate our armor class anyway, based on the character archetypes. So you could very well reskin a lot of those elements into your world based on the circumstances. And without changing the rules, who cares what it looks like, Zach says, it only pigeonholes a bit. With Smite, Paladins are the only martial class that can make weapon plus shield work. Yeah, and I think mechanically they try to do that. I think the problem, though, as we talked about earlier in like man, thank you, Michael. Says True never considered reskinning a shield. Thanks for the idea. Yeah, you could reskin magic as well. Like, does magic really need to look or work the way it is? When a paladin lays on hands, do their hands glow and the wound knit together, or are you playing more gritty and it's more of a get your ass back up in the battle, and the person's like, okay, and then they get back up, and it doesn't narratively look like they healed them, but they get like a second wind, even though they still have that spear in their side or something, um, Cameron says, a shield with a photorealistic painting of your enemy's mother. What? Well, I don't know why I thought of this. That's a big giant F you to your enemy. Go ahead and hit it. I can't. You bastard. Oh man. Oh no. Then their sword comes out of the open mouth, spearing them. You never call me. Oh. Or a shield that's a sentient magic item that warns you of incoming attack. Well, yeah, magic shields that speak or send messages or sing or something like that. Yeah, you got to have one of those in the game. Rickard says, oath of devotion, honesty. A paladin has given their word to return an item. popped a little bit. An item, at any cost, they are confronted by guards that ask them a question that the paladin knows they have to lie to be able to uphold their promise. So which lie will they commit? Their explicit promise or lying to the guard? Exactly. Exactly. Those are situations where I feel like let the player make the decision and then live with the consequences afterwards, rather than pigeonholing like you better make this comment, you better answer correctly. You know, predetermined outcomes oftentimes ruin gameplay, and that's a truism across the board for any solving puzzles, riddles, moral quandaries, that kind of thing. Yep. Rickard says it's in that situation Paladins' oaths become interesting, where they have to both uphold them and break them. Exactly. And then here's the atonement part. Why not have atonement be part of the game? Hey, to atone for my sin, I have to. It could be something minor like a vow of silence or tithing or something, or traveling to a particular region or whatever, and maybe the player characters go along with them, and that becomes the side quest, or taking along with them. I don't know, acolytes or yeomen or henchmen or something, or devotees of their order to teach them. Lone Wolf and Cub is a great example of a style of oath where you have this individual who's a badass at killing, but they also have to take care of the small child, and they understand how the world works one way, but they're learning how the world works because it's through the eyes of someone else, which might be a great way to change your paladin's oath through the course of play organically, which I think would be kind of cool too, just to say, hey, can I change my character's function? I think their oath of vengeance has changed to, hey, my oath of vengeance paladin has defeated the great evil on the other side of the mountains. Now that we're setting up a new settlement, can I change the oath of devotion to the community? And you're like, makes sense to me. Why not? Yep. Ricker says, or maybe they let the rogue lie for the group and do whatever they can not to answer the question. Yeah, dodging around it. Do you have the weapon? Do I? I don't know. Now that you ask, I may or may not. Is it on my person? No, even though they're like, it's in the wagon. Shh, don't ask me that. Yep. Like Zach says, yeah, it doesn't have to be something super complicated. Yep. Mofa says, or to be more horrible, a magic shield that projects image of your foe's loved ones, a parent, sibling, or child. You guys are just getting brutal here. You got psychologically harmful. Or a more appropriate version for a paladin, one that makes someone see the most sinful thing they ever did. Ooh. Now, there are one other issue we could have, especially today being Monster Monday, is that there could be an excellent reason, even though we understand that they might be enemies, as to why there are things opposed to the paladins in the first place. Like, let's say, I don't know, let's go with hags or something, and maybe like the evil hag, the paladins want to go out to kill the evil hag, and come to find out that the community was built on lies, and that these individuals may have been changed because they broke their oaths, but they broke their oath on purpose because of something. Like, for example, Jedi and Sith kind of work that way, right? Where there's been this back and forth of the Jedi being too strict and individuals wanting to break the Jedi code to, say, go after some evil people, when you come to find out that the people who break the Jedi code, maybe they themselves start going down a path of turning to the side of the Sith, but them not knowing it, to do the thing, like the goblinoid hordes killing everyone, and the nation state saying, no, let's not hunt them down. And the paladin's orders like, yeah, but we got them on a run. We could end this right now. And then, of course, the cadre leaves, and then they get so caught up in their own battle that they start doing more and more vicious things to their enemy, i.e., begin losing their oath, changing into something else, and then maybe the next generation they're like, they were the oath breakers, they're the evil anti-paladins, or what are they called? I was about to say Crimson Guard. Oh, I can't remember the title of the subclass, but anyway, they become blackguards or something like that, right? And so they become something else, but come to find out that they became that way. I mean, it could be my brain's not working. A cautionary tale. Woo. There could be a cautionary tale to the PCs, like, yeah, we're your enemy, but understand, don't be like us. We are martyred our souls to do this thing, or whatnot. Ricker says it's like the I guess Aes Sedai in the Wheel of Time. They can't lie, but that doesn't stop them from not telling the truth. Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, getting around those kinds of things, and you know, modifying. I agree with Zach's 200 about uh, modifying the oaths so that Death Angel's Shadow, Oathbreaker is in the Dungeon Master's Guide, I believe, as a Dungeon Master's version of the ant version. Used to be the old anti-paladin, but modifying the devotions themselves, whether like an oath of vengeance is against a particular type of enemy, or it is against a wrongdoing that has a temporary or limited effect, or an oath of devotion to um, not a religion, or even an ideal, but it could be a group of people, or it might be um, like you're supposed to take this oath until a certain age is done, or someone is there to take your place, so you could kind of play with that as well. Like an oath of vengeance might just be to destroy the lich, but when the lich is destroyed, the oath is done, because maybe it's very personal, which is another way of doing and taking a paladin's oath, where a PC is like, it's the classic small child sees their loved ones killed. We're going into murder hoboism, right? Sees their loved ones killed, says, "I swear I will do this thing." They devote themselves to the oath. They get older, and then they fulfill the requirements of their vengeance. So now they're done, and you're like, where am I going to go with my character again? And so maybe they become devoted to like their new family, or to the new nation state, or another religion in the character classes group might be kind of cool as well. And you could also go. We can talk about neutral and chaotic aligned oaths as well, but which I don't have a problem with as well. I think they fit perfectly. Like Zach says, 200 says, you could swear an oath to the god of trickery and deceit from the get-go in my campaign. Oh yeah. I think an oath sounds like a lawful act, but the oath could be to behavior that is very chaotic in your world, right? Oh, Cameron, I think I want to make an oath of bread paladin. A jolly campfire cook who volunteers at shelters when in cities and fights with a triple baked baguette. Oh no, the oath of cooking. Yeah. Mm-mm-mm. Oh man. Rickard says, the guard, the Lord isn't expecting any visitors. State your business. Paladin says, looks the guard up and down. Do you think I would be here if I didn't have business? Out of my way, fool. Rolls intimidation. Yep, without having a lie. Paladin hasn't lied, nor have they broken any other oath. Yeah. I give him the slow clap on that one. Out of my way. Okay. Uh, we've seen plenty of detective procedural television shows where you have a police officer dedicated to the truth, or bringing justice, or dedicated to their superiors, where they get into trouble about a thing. They committed a crime. We don't have evidence. We still have to bring them to justice. We don't have any evidence. How are we going to get the evidence? Let's beat the suspect up in the room or something, right? Yep. Like Mofa says, Judge Dredd, I am the law. Wrong movie. I prefer the Dredd movie. Uh, OOA. My brain is farting on that, Zax. Could be an old one just as much as Oath of the Occult or Oathbreaker and DMG, since they are ancient. After all, Oath of Dexter. Ooh, Oath of Dexter. Do not fear my long sword, fear my scalpel. Rickard also says, yeah, Oath of Ancients. Yeah, sorry. Um, Difficult for me live to break apart acronyms sometimes. Like I am the. Also, who would be stupid enough to stand in the way of the good dogmatic zealot that seems pissed off? Not too many people. Not too many people. Um, do they have a curled mustache? Mm-mm-mm. Mm-mm-mm. Now, we are coming towards the end of the show. I just realized that the a lot of the just to end this on a note, just because it is supposed to be Monster Monday, there by making a lot of the enemies very personal to the Paladins order, or if it is an order, or to the oath that is taking place. Like for example, maybe maybe there aren't like generalized monsters out in the world, but there are a family or group of monsters that are specifically opposed to what the Paladins Order stands for. Again, maybe they committed some kind of evil against a particular population of the world, desecrated some kind of religious figure, or they were, I don't know, they they were known to be allied with killers of the local nobles and set the countryside into chaos. And so you could make it very personal to the Paladin's Order without the Paladin needing to avoid the murder hoboism in general, where it's more or less like I'm thinking of the classic Western, where it's not the U.S. Marshal going after every criminal. It is the U.S. Marshal going after specific criminals. So maybe there's a specific tribe of, say, lizard folk that are particularly brutal or sadistic or something, rather than all lizard folk, right? Or maybe it's not even the entire nation state that's on the other side of the valley. It could be the regime of this particular politician who's in control, or the Council of Seven. I always bring up the Council of Seven of wizards that are specifically in control. Once those wizards are deposed, then it's not a matter of killing all the people that are part of the evil nation or something. It could also be the monsters might be transformed innocents. So it's not a matter of killing them. It might be a matter of releasing them. So maybe the characters like Oath of Vengeance isn't about killing, I don't know, the innocent people that were transformed into trolls. It is, I don't want to kill them. I want to kill the thing, destroy the thing that turned them that way, to extricate the innocent people out of it. Yeah. Rickard said, good monsters, Oathbreakers of the Order who opposes the Paladin Order's goal, beings that tempt the Paladins to break their oaths, yep, or if you can manage to swing it, the Paladin's Order itself. Yeah, like the Oathbreakers who left the Order are there to try to trick or convince or recruit the Paladin's Order. Or maybe, and here's another devious one, and you might even have to talk about this up front instead of keeping it a secret. Maybe the Paladin is devoted to something that is evil. The Paladin isn't evil, like say a Paladin of devotion or ancients or something, but maybe in hindsight they realize that they are supporting a regime that is evil, and the evil monsters are actually the good guys. And so that would put the Paladin in a deep moral quandary. Classically, like the detective that's trying to stop the criminals, but the criminals are like, well, we are breaking the law, but because there's someone dirty inside your own, in the FBI or something like that, in your own political thing, and then of course the character's like, "Ooh, I'm out to bring justice. That means I got to turn against my own people," And so that paladin of devotion might not be devoted to their countryside. Maybe they're devoted to uncovering the evil inside of their own realm, and that really twists that around where yes, now they're maybe as a dungeon master you're like, yep, you can break the law as much as you want because there are evil things going on. Mike Gould says, just made it at the end, make a monster a rival paladin, a frost or fire giant oath of conquest, a hobgoblin warlord oath of the crown, or even if you like something weird, a Koatoa oathbreaker. Yeah, giving oaths to your enemies, or well, just layering character class features on top of other enemies is actually a really good idea. Giving rage to a barbarian rage to a monster is great. Giving a paladin's oath to a monster actually kind of twists it around because it's, while strange, it might actually make them a little bit of an ally based on the circumstances. Yeah, and like Rickard says, good as in thematic monsters for a paladin. Right, right. Specific for them, not necessarily good, period. But it's the enemy that's fights the paladin, but stops because they don't want to harm any children, let's say, or they're like, if you're holding a weapon, you're game. But if you're an innocent, we're not going to harm them. And so maybe the paladin's like, ooh, I got some respect for them. Zax200 says, had a demon possession at an orphanage in one campaign. One metagamer swore up and down that the headmistress was the possessed, but Paladin's fiend radar, I forget what the power is called at the moment, actually pinged off the kids. Had to exercise, basically. Exercise, not lifting weights, but exercise the demon out of the kids before fighting. Yep. It's a possibility that you might have to do that. Like, ooh, I want to kill them, but that's a grandmother. I don't want to do that. Death's Angel's Shadow says, or they could have an oath to an evil deity. So, yeah, exactly. Why not have an oath to an oath of devotion to an evil deity for like a monster? Why not? I get why, but I always felt it strange that evil creatures couldn't heal their own because of magic, but it's just because of reasons. I think it's the association. It's an implied association that healing is good and harm is evil. So they don't want to give healing or protections to evil creatures. But I think thematically it fits. Mike Gould says, I homebrewed an oath for Thole to reflect the Inquisition-inspired Empire of Carginia. I'm going to say it's pronounced that way, Carginia. The players were mostly spell using in a land that distrusted arcane magic. Paladins were the bad guys. Ooh, Inquisitions. Yeah, they always turn bad. Oh, Carginia. Yeah, don't at me with the pronunciations. We already go through that, man. Michael Marin says a disarmament oath holding monster where he will let the players go if they give up their weapons. Ooh, or any number of things, right? Like it could be a disarmament, like especially when you start thinking more or less where the paladins are fighting other enemies, but they're also very lawful or traditional in their outlook. Monsters that are into duels, or we only fight at a specific time and place to settle our differences, or we take it to the arena, or send your 5 best warriors and we will send our 5 and we will settle this, with blood and sand or something. Like that could very well be a great way to bring across that the enemy might also have a code of conduct, Yep. like Lysander says, no one expects the Spanish Inquisition. But anyway, guys, we've come to the end. I do have to go to work. Oh, yep. There's that quote. The road to hell is paved by good intentions. Any order can have one or more of their tenets slightly twisted. It makes twisted to make them evil rather than good. There is a weirdism in Dungeons and Dragons where lawful good and chaotic evil, if you've ever take a look at that cube, it kind of leaks. Both ends of the spectrum can kind of lead themselves back to their opposites because of that action. Where the more you rationalize your own, the more you have to rationalize your behavior. Well, I killed those women and children are othered, or they are less than human or subhuman or something. The more we have to rationalize our heinous acts, the greater we start to go down that evil path. And I think that's kind of the good thing about Paladins, right? That's where the meat and the bread and butter, the meat is in that character class. And I don't think we should stay away from it, both DMs and players. I think confronting it and saying in session 0, like, hey, I'm going to be doing things that might be testing my oath, and is it okay if I start to dip and dive and maneuver in it? And as a dungeon master, I'm like, yeah, those are great times, having conversations and all that kind of business. I think it's great. So anyway, guys, call to action time. Please like, share, subscribe. Check out the channel. Check out Critical Hit Publishing and all the information that's located below the video on YouTube and Twitch. And of course, as always, everyone have a great day. Salutations. Stay safe, everybody. Everybody be great. I'll see you later. Bye. Mm-mm-mm.